The dinner shift at Bellissimo had stretched into its 5th hour, and my feet were screaming inside the mandatory black heels. 17 tables, countless orders, and not a single moment to catch my breath. The elegant Italian restaurant with its dimmed crystal chandeliers and plush velvet booths was supposed to be Milan's finest dining experience, at least for the patrons. For waitstaff like me, it was elegant servitude. "Table 12 needs another round," Marco, the floor manager, snapped as he passed. His eyes never quite met mine. They never did with any of the staff. We were furniture that moved, nothing more. I nodded, tucking a strand of dark hair behind my ear. My name tag read Sophia, though I sometimes wondered if anyone ever noticed. 7 months in this job, and I'd become invisible, except when something went wrong. The night air seeped through the restaurant's windows, carrying the scent of rain and cigarette smoke from the terrace. Milan in November was a city of shadows, all gray skies and glistening pavements. I'd come here with dreams of fashion design, but reality had a way of crushing fantasies. Now, at 26, I juggled this job with night classes and taking care of my 5-year-old daughter, Lucia. "Sophia, private room," Elisabetta, the hostess, whispered urgently. Her usually composed face was tight with tension. "Mr. Ricci is here." My stomach dropped. Everyone at Bellissimo knew what that meant. Alessandro Ricci wasn't just a regular patron. He was the ghost that loomed over half of Milan's businesses. No one ever said Mafia out loud, but his reputation whispered itself through the city's streets. His legitimate businesses, shipping, real estate, high-end retail, were just the surface of his empire. "Did Giuseppe call in sick again?" I asked, knowing the private dining room was usually reserved for the most senior waitstaff. "No, they specifically asked for someone new." Her eyes darted nervously to the ornate double doors at the far end of the restaurant. "Don't make them wait." The weight of her words settled over me like a shroud. Being noticed by someone like Ricci was never a blessing. I straightened my black uniform dress, checked my apron for stains, and made my way across the restaurant floor. The private dining room was separated from the main area by heavy curtains and a short hallway lined with wine racks. I balanced a tray of fresh glasses in one hand and pushed the door open with the other. The first thing that hit me was the silence. Unlike the gentle hum of the main restaurant with its clinking silverware and murmured conversations, the private room had a stillness that felt manufactured, like everyone was holding their breath. 4 men sat around a table meant for 12. At the head sat an older man, perhaps in his late 50s, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit. His silver-streaked dark hair was combed back from a face that seemed carved from stone, all sharp angles and watchful eyes. Without anyone telling me, I knew this was Alessandro Ricci. He didn't look up as I entered, focused on whatever the younger man beside him was saying in hushed tones. The young man, however, paused mid-sentence. He couldn't have been more than 30, with the same olive skin and commanding presence as the older man, but softer somehow. Where the father was all hard edges, the son, because the resemblance was unmistakable, had an artist's face. High cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Those eyes found mine now, and something flickered in them. 2 bodyguards occupied the other chairs, their jackets strategically unbuttoned, their massive frames making the elegant dining chairs look like dollhouse furniture. They assessed me with cold, professional disinterest. "Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Sophia, and I'll be serving you tonight," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "May I offer you some water while you look at the menu?" Alessandro Ricci finally looked up, his gaze sweeping over me with clinical detachment, as if appraising livestock. "Wine? The Brunello di Montalcino, 2010? I nodded, careful not to make direct eye contact. "Right away, sir." As I turned to leave, I felt more than saw the son watching me. There was something in his attention that felt different, less evaluative and more curious. I dismissed the thought as I hurried to the wine cellar. Curiosity from men like that was never innocent. When I returned with the wine, I found the atmosphere had shifted. The older Ricci was on his phone, speaking tersely in a dialect I couldn't quite place. The bodyguards had moved to stand near the door, their backs to the room but their attention clearly focused outward. Only the son remained seated, flipping through the menu with disinterest. As I approached to pour the wine, He tilted his head slightly, and our eyes met properly for the first time. His were the color of amber, flecked with gold, and they held mine with an intensity that made my hands tremble slightly as I poured. "You're new," he said, his voice lower than I expected, with a softness that belied his position. "To this dining room, yes. I've worked at Bellissimo for 7 months." I wasn't sure why I added that detail. A slight smile touched his lips. "I'm Matteo." Before I could respond, Alessandro finished his call and the room snapped back to attention. I completed pouring the wine in silence, feeling Matteo's eyes on me throughout. "We'll have the chef's tasting menu," Alessandro said, not bothering with the pretense of looking at what that might entail. "And make sure we're not disturbed." I nodded and retreated, but as I reached the door, I heard Matteo's voice. "Father, perhaps Sophia could be our dedicated server tonight. The others can be indiscreet." I froze, my back to them, heart suddenly pounding. Being noticed by these men was dangerous. Being specifically requested was terrifying. "If you wish." Alessandro's tone suggested complete disinterest. Throughout the next hour, I moved in and out of the private room, delivering course after course of Chef Renato's finest creations. Each time I entered, conversations would halt, resuming only after I'd left. The bodyguards' positions shifted throughout the night, sometimes at the table, sometimes by the door, but always vigilant. It was during the 4th course, a delicate sea base with saffron sauce, that I noticed Matteo watching me more intently. As I leaned forward to set down his plate, his hand brushed against mine. The contact was brief, but deliberate. When I looked up, startled, his eyes moved deliberately toward a folded napkin on the table's edge, a signal, clear as day. My pulse quickened. I'd heard stories from other servers about notes being passed during business dinners, usually containing numbers for deals or threats. Whatever was in that napkin, I wanted no part of it, but refusing would be more dangerous than complying. With shaking hands, I collected the empty bread basket, discreetly taking the napkin with it. Once in the kitchen, I unfolded it quickly, expecting to find coordinates or a name. Instead, there was a childish drawing of a flower, and beneath it, hastily written, "Please smile. You look sad." I stood there, frozen in confusion. Was this some kind of test? A joke at my expense? I tucked the note into my apron pocket, unsure how to respond. When I returned with the next course, I kept my expression neutral, focusing on placing the dishes correctly. As I set Matteo's plate down, he looked up at me expectantly. Without thinking, I gave him a small, genuine smile, the kind I usually reserved for Lucia when she brought home her kindergarten artwork. Something changed in Matteo's face then. His eyes softened, and the corner of his mouth lifted in response. But it was Alessandro's reaction that surprised me most. The Mafia boss had been watching our silent exchange, and for a brief moment, his hard expression faltered. He looked at his son with what seemed like pride, satisfaction. Whatever it was, it disappeared quickly, replaced by his usual stone facade. "The sea bass is exceptional tonight," Alessandro said, breaking the silence. It was the first comment he'd made about the food all evening. "Thank you, sir. Chef Renato will be pleased to hear that," I replied, still bewildered by the strange undercurrent in the room. "You have a child," Alessandro stated suddenly. It wasn't a question. Ice flooded my veins. How could he possibly know about Lucia? Had they been watching me? Investigating me? Yes, I admitted, seeing no point in denying it. "A daughter," he continued, taking a sip of wine, his eyes never leaving mine. "She has your smile." My hands began to tremble, and I clasped them tightly behind my back. The implication was clear. They knew exactly who I was, where I lived, who I loved. My entire body felt cold with fear. "A beautiful child," Matteo interjected, his voice gentler than his father's. "You must be proud." I nodded, unable to form words. Pride was only one of the countless emotions I felt about Lucia. Love, fear, desperation, hope. But in that moment, terror overshadowed everything else. "Family is everything," Alessandro said, returning his attention to his meal. "You may go." I backed out of the room, nearly colliding with Marco in the hallway. What's happening in there? He demanded, his voice hushed. They never interact with the staff like this. I don't know, I whispered honestly. But they know about my daughter. Marco's face paled. Sophia, be careful. When men like that take an interest, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. For the remainder of their meal, I moved mechanically through my duties, fighting the urge to call my neighbor who was watching Lucia to make sure my daughter was safe. Each time I entered the private room, I felt the weight of knowledge bearing down on me. They had power, they had information, and for some unfathomable reason, they had noticed me. As they prepared to leave, Alessandro handed me a heavy envelope. For your service, he said coldly. I took it with numb fingers, knowing better than to refuse. As the bodyguards moved toward the exit, Matteo lingered behind. Your daughter likes drawing, he said quietly. Perhaps she would enjoy better materials than those kindergarten crayons. My breath caught. How detailed was their information about us? She likes anything colorful, I heard myself say, as if this were a normal conversation about a child's preferences. Matteo nodded, a strange expression crossing his face. Something almost like longing. Children deserve beautiful things in their lives. Good night, Sophia. As they disappeared into the Milan night, surrounded by black SUVs and silent men with earpieces, I finally opened the envelope. Inside was more cash than I made in 3 months, along with a business card bearing only a phone number, no name. I shoved it into my pocket, suddenly desperate to get home to Lucia, to hold her and make sure she was safe. Whatever game the Ricci's were playing, I wanted no part of it. But as I hurried through the rain-slicked streets toward my tiny apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that I no longer had a choice. The rain had soaked through my thin coat by the time I reached my building, but I barely noticed the cold. All I could think about was that folded napkin, that strange smile, and the terrifying knowledge that the most dangerous family in Milan now knew about mine. I didn't sleep that night. Even with Lucia's warm little body curled against mine in our one-bedroom apartment, even with the 3 deadbolts I'd installed on our door, I couldn't close my eyes without seeing Matteo Ricci's amber gaze or feeling Alessandro's calculated assessment. The envelope of cash sat untouched on my kitchen counter, a Pandora's box I was afraid to fully acknowledge. By morning light, when Lucia bounced awake with her usual 5-year-old energy, I'd convinced myself that perhaps it had been a one-time encounter, a strange, unnerving blip in an otherwise unremarkable life. Mama, can I wear my butterfly shirt today? Lucia asked, her dark curls wild from sleep. Her eyes, so like mine, bright with the uncomplicated joy of childhood. Of course, tesoro. I smoothed her hair, studying her face for the smile that had somehow caught the attention of a mafia boss. When she grinned up at me, I saw it. The slight dimple in her right cheek, the way her entire face transformed with happiness. It was the same smile I'd given to Matteo Ricci the night before, the one that had somehow melted his father's heart, according to the strange note. After dropping Lucia at kindergarten, checking twice to make sure her teacher knew only I was authorized for pickup, I headed to my morning design class. Fashion had been my dream since I was younger than Lucia, but life had intervened. Her father, Marco, had been a fellow design student, charming and ambitious. He'd disappeared 2 weeks after I told him about the pregnancy, taking my savings and portfolio with him. Now I was a semester away from finally finishing my degree, juggling coursework between shifts and motherhood. As I sketched silhouettes for our final project, my mind kept wandering back to the Ricci's. Why had they noticed me? What did they want? The business card burned in my wallet. One phone call and I might have answers, but at what cost? Sophia, your lines are too hesitant today, my professor commented, pausing behind my workstation. Remember what I always say, commit to the design. Uncertainty shows in every stroke. If only she knew how uncertainty was currently showing in every aspect of my life. By the time my afternoon shift at Bellissimo began, I'd half convinced myself that the previous night had been exaggerated by my tired mind. The restaurant was busy with the lunch crowd, businessmen in tailored suits and ladies who lunched, all demanding attention and perfect service. No sign of the Ricci's. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Sophia, office now, Marco said, materializing beside me as I delivered a plate of risotto to table 7. His face was tight with strain, tiny beads of sweat visible at his hairline despite the restaurant's careful air conditioning. In the small manager's office, away from the dining floor, Marco paced like a caged animal. "What did you do last night?" "Nothing," I said, confused. "I served them dinner, like you told me to." "Well, something happened, because Alessandro Ricci's people called this morning. They've reserved the private dining room again tonight, and they specifically requested you." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "Me? But I have the early shift today. I'm supposed to leave at 6 to pick up Lucia." Marco ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Sophia, you don't understand. When the Ricci's request something, it's not actually a request. It's a command with polite packaging. I can't leave Lucia with my neighbor again. She has school tomorrow, and I promised—" "They've already taken care of that," Marco interrupted, his voice dropping to a whisper. "What do you mean, taking care of that?" Alarm bells clanged in my head. Marco looked physically ill now. "A woman called your neighbor. How they got her number, I don't know and don't want to know. She explained that you'd be working late and arranged for a car to take your daughter to her grandmother's house for the night." "I don't have a mother," I said, my voice hollow with dread. "She died when I was 19. Marco's eyes widened. "Sophia, what the hell is going on? Why are they interested in you?" "I don't know," I whispered, panic rising in my throat. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called Mrs. Bianchi, my elderly neighbor. "Oh, Sophia dear," she answered cheerfully. "I was just about to call you. Such a nice arrangement you've made for Lucia tonight. The lady was very professional, said the car would come at 6, and she'd be taken to stay with family." I was going to ask which relative, but it seemed you'd sorted it all. "Mrs. Bianchi, listen to me carefully," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "There is no arrangement. I don't have family here. Do not let anyone take Lucia. I'm leaving work right now to get her." "But dear," the woman knew all the details. "Your work schedule, even that special blanket Lucia can't sleep without." "It's not safe," I cut in. "Please, just keep her in your apartment until I get there. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." I ended the call and looked at Marco, who had sunk into his desk chair. "I need to go. Now." "If you leave, I can't protect you," he said quietly. "The Ricci's don't take rejection well." "They're trying to take my daughter," I hissed. "What would you have me do?" Before he could answer, his office phone rang. He stared at it as if it might bite him, then slowly picked up the receiver. "Yes? Yes, she's here." His eyes flicked to me. "I understand. Right away." He set the phone down with exaggerated care. "That was Matteo Ricci's assistant. A car is waiting for you outside. Now." "I'm not going anywhere except to my daughter. Sophia." Marco's voice cracked slightly. "They said to tell you that Lucia is already safe with them, and if you want to see her, you'll get in the car." The world narrowed to a pinpoint of blinding terror. My knees threatened to buckle. "They've taken her? Already?" "I don't know. But if they say they have her," he didn't need to finish. I was moving before conscious thought, tearing off my apron, grabbing my bag, rushing through the kitchen and out the service entrance. A sleek black Audi idled at the curb, its windows tinted to opacity. A driver in a dark suit stood beside it, opening the rear door as I approached. "Where's my daughter?" I demanded, making no move to get inside. "Miss Russo, please get in the car. Mr. Ricci is waiting." "Which Mr. Ricci? And where is Lucia?" The driver's expression didn't change. "Your daughter is safe. That's all I'm authorized to tell you. I had no choice." I slid into the back seat, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The car pulled smoothly into Milan's afternoon traffic, navigating away from the city center toward the more affluent northern neighborhoods. I clutched my phone, considering calling the police. But what would I say? That I suspected a Mafia family had my daughter? That I'd been serving them dinner the night before and somehow caught their attention? It sounded insane even to me. After 20 minutes that felt like 20 years, the car turned into a gated driveway. Massive iron gates swung open to reveal a sprawling villa set back from the road, its stone facade the color of aged ivory, its gardens immaculately maintained despite the November chill. As the car rolled to a stop in the circular driveway, my door opened to reveal Matteo Ricci. Up close, in daylight, he was even more striking than I remembered. Tall and lean, with that perfectly tailored suit emphasizing broad shoulders. But I barely registered his appearance. "Where is Lucia?" I demanded, not waiting for pleasantries. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "She's inside, having ice cream in the kitchen. She's perfectly safe, Sophia. I promise you. You kidnapped my 5-year-old daughter," I said, voice shaking with fury and fear. "Don't talk to me about promises. We didn't kidnap her," he said quietly. "We protected her." "From what?" "From who?" he corrected, gesturing for me to follow him into the house. "You don't work in a restaurant for 7 months without hearing rumors, Sophia. You know what my family does, what my father is. Did you really think serving us, being noticed by us, would have no consequences?" I followed him through a marble foyer larger than my entire apartment, down a hallway lined with what looked like original Renaissance artwork. "I didn't ask to be noticed," I said, struggling to keep up with his long strides. "No, you didn't." He paused, turning to look at me fully. "But I noticed you anyway, and others noticed my interest. That put you and Lucia in danger." "So you're saying you endangered us, then kidnapped her for her protection?" The absurdity of it would have made me laugh if I weren't so terrified. "I'm saying that once I showed interest in you last night, certain rivals would have seen you as leverage. We moved Lucia here because it's the safest place in Milan. We'd reached a massive kitchen that gleamed with stainless steel and marble. And there, perched on a bar stool at the island, her legs swinging happily, was Lucia. She was spooning chocolate gelato into her mouth while chatting animatedly with a middle-aged woman in a simple black dress, presumably a housekeeper or cook. "Mama!" Lucia squealed when she saw me, her face lighting up. She slid off the stool and ran to me. I dropped to my knees, gathering her into a fierce hug, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling her solid warmth against me. "Are you okay, Tesoro? Did anyone hurt you?" I pulled back to examine her face, her arms, looking for any sign of distress. "I'm fine, Mama. They have so much gelato here, and Signora Elena let me help make pasta, and there's a garden with a fountain shaped like a lion." Her eyes were bright with excitement, not fear. I looked up to find Matteo watching us, an unreadable expression on his face. Behind him stood Alessandro Ricci, silent and observant, his cold eyes taking in the reunion. "You had no right," I said, rising to my feet but keeping Lucia close against me. "No matter what your reasons were, perhaps not," Alessandro said, speaking for the first time. "But rights matter little in matters of necessity. Come, we have things to discuss. Elena will watch the child. I'm not letting her out of my sight," I said firmly. Alessandro's eyebrow raised a fraction, as if unused to being contradicted. "Very well. The garden room, then. It has space for the child to play." The garden room turned out to be a vast conservatory filled with tropical plants and comfortable seating. Lucia immediately spotted a shelf of children's books and toys in one corner, clearly placed there in anticipation of her visit. "You planned this," I said accusingly as she skipped off to explore, still within my sight, but out of earshot. "We plan everything," Alessandro replied simply, lowering himself into an armchair that seemed to swallow his frame. Beside him, Matteo remained standing, his posture tense. "Why am I here? What do you want from me?" I remained standing as well, too anxious to sit. "Do you know who Lucia's father is?" Alessandro asked, ignoring my questions. The non sequitur caught me off guard. "Marco Venuti, a design student. He left before she was born." Alessandro and Matteo exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. "Marco Venuti doesn't exist," Alessandro said flatly. "The man who fathered your child is Domenico Russo. My nephew." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "That's not possible. His name was Marco. We met at design school. We were together for 6 months. Domenico infiltrated the school on my orders," Alessandro continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "He was tasked with gathering information on Professor Giancarlo Belli, who was helping a rival family launder money through the school's foundation. Using the name Marco Venuti was part of his cover." My mind reeled, trying to reconcile the charming, artistic man I'd known with this cold description of an undercover operative. "No," I shook my head. You're lying. Father, Matteo interjected. Perhaps we should... Alessandro silenced him with a look. Domenico completed his mission, retrieved the necessary evidence, and was extracted. He had orders not to form attachments. When he reported his indiscretion with you, I ordered him to cut all ties. Indiscretion, I repeated numbly. That's what I was? What Lucia is? An indiscretion? At the time, yes. Alessandro's voice remained emotionless. Domenico disobeyed by becoming involved with you. He disobeyed again by returning to Milan 3 months ago, seeking information about you and the child. My breath caught. He came back? He did. Alessandro's jaw tightened and was killed for his trouble by the same people Giancarlo Belli worked for. They never forgot his betrayal, even after 5 years. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Domenico, was dead. The father Lucia had never known would never be known to her. Why are you telling me this now? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Because you were noticed, Matteo said, stepping forward. I took you to be just another waitress when I first saw you, but when you smiled, he hesitated. You have his smile, the same one Lucia has. I recognized my cousin in both of you instantly. That's impossible. You couldn't know just from a smile. Family recognizes family, Alessandro interrupted. Matteo has his mother's intuition. I didn't see it until he pointed it out, but once I did, it was unmistakable. Lucia is Domenico's daughter, which makes her a Ricci by blood, whether you like it or not. I sank into the nearest chair, my legs no longer able to support me. Across the room, Lucia had found a stuffed elephant and was happily narrating an adventure to it, oblivious to the fact that her entire history was being rewritten. The people who killed Domenico now know about you, Matteo said quietly, sitting in the chair opposite mine. They've been watching Bellissimo for weeks, tracking our movements. When they saw my reaction to you last night, when they saw my father's recognition of his grandniece, they knew immediately who you must be. So my serving you dinner put us in danger, I summarized bitterly. No, Matteo's voice hardened. Domenico's recklessness put you in danger years ago. Our recognition of you merely accelerated the timeline. I looked over at my daughter, at the dimpled smile she'd inherited from a man whose real name I hadn't even known, at the dark curls that matched those of the man sitting across from me. What happens now? Alessandro stood, straightening his jacket with a practiced gesture. Now you and Lucia stay here where we can protect you. The guest wing has been prepared. Elena will help you with anything you need. For how long? Until the threat is eliminated, he said simply. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have business to attend to. He left without another word, leaving me alone with Matteo and the weight of revelations too heavy to process. Lucia had abandoned her elephant and was now examining a bird cage containing 2 brilliantly colored finches, her delight evident in every movement. I know this is overwhelming, Matteo said, his voice gentler than his father's had ever been. But you need to understand. The people who killed Domenico won't hesitate to use you and Lucia to hurt our family. We're not your family, I said automatically, but the words rang hollow even to my own ears. The evidence was playing with birds not 10 feet away, her profile suddenly, unmistakably reminiscent of the man beside me. Blood says otherwise, Matteo replied. But even if it didn't, even if Lucia weren't my cousin's child, I would still want to protect you both. Something in his tone made me look at him more closely. Why? A shadow of vulnerability crossed his face before disappearing behind a careful mask. Because your smile reminded me that not everything in my world is darkness and calculation. Because for a moment in that restaurant, when you responded to my silly drawing, I remembered what it was like to be human, not just a Ricci. It was too much. The kidnapping, the revelations, the strange intensity in Matteo's amber eyes. I stood abruptly. I need to be with my daughter. I need to think. He nodded, rising as well. Of course. Elena will show you to your rooms when you're ready. Sophia, he hesitated. I'm sorry about how this happened, but I'm not sorry you're here. Neither of you will come to harm under this roof. I swear it. As he left, I watched Lucia's delighted expression as she discovered yet another wonder in this beautiful prison we now found ourselves in. A Ricci by blood. A Mafia princess, whether she knew it or not. The realization settled over me like a weight. We had been invisible for 5 years, safe in our anonymity. Now we were seen, by enemies, by family we'd never known existed. And somehow, I knew our lives would never be the same again. The guest wing of the Ricci villa turned out to be larger than our entire apartment building back in the city. Elena, the housekeeper who'd been watching Lucia, showed us to adjoining rooms decorated in soft creams and blues. Lucia's temporary bedroom had a canopy bed that made her squeal with delight, complete with a stuffed animal collection that would have put a toy store to shame. These were prepared very quickly, I remarked to Elena as Lucia explored her new domain. The older woman's eyes softened slightly. Not as quickly as you might think, Signora. Young Mr. Matteo gave instructions weeks ago, after the first report came about Domenico's child. Weeks ago? They've known about us for weeks and said nothing? Elena busied herself turning down the bed. It is not my place to discuss family matters. But I will say that Mr. Alessandro is cautious. He wanted verification before acting. After Elena left, I sat on the edge of Lucia's new bed, watching her arrange stuffed animals in a precise line. Tesoro, how would you feel about staying here for a few days? I asked carefully. Lucia looked up, her eyes bright. Can we? It's like a castle, Mama. And Signora Elena said there are horses in the stables. I smoothed her wild curls, trying to reconcile my terrified heart with her innocent excitement. Yes, we'll stay a little while. But you must promise to stay close to me or Elena, okay? No wandering off. Because of the bad men? She asked matter-of-factly. My blood froze. What bad men, Lucia? Did someone say something to you? She shook her head, arranging a teddy bear just so. I heard Signor Matteo talking to the big man by the car. He said bad men might try to hurt us, but that we're safe here. She looked up at me with complete trust. Are we safe, Mama? I gathered her into my arms, her small body warm against mine. Yes, Tesoro, we're safe. I prayed it wasn't a lie. That night, after I'd tucked Lucia into her princess bed, I paced my own lavish room, mind racing. The envelope of cash still sat in my bag, untouched. Next to it was the phone they'd given me. A secure line, Matteo had called it. My own phone had been politely but firmly confiscated, deemed too easily traceable. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Matteo stood in the doorway, his imposing frame somehow less threatening in the warm hallway light. He'd changed from his business suit into dark jeans and a simple black sweater that made him look almost normal, almost approachable. May I come in? He asked, remaining on the threshold. I nodded, suddenly aware of my own disheveled appearance. Still in my waitress uniform, hair falling from its once neat bun. How is Lucia? He stepped inside but maintained a respectful distance. Asleep in a bed fit for royalty, I said, completely untroubled by the fact that her life has been completely upended. Children are resilient, he offered. And adults? What are we, Matteo? Hostages? Guests? Family? The question that had been plaguing me spilled out. He considered this, his amber eyes thoughtful. I suppose that depends on you. My father sees Lucia as family, which makes you family by extension. I see you both as people who need protection. And that's it? Protection is all this is about? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. A flash of something, hurt, frustration, crossed his face. What else would it be about? Power. Control. Whatever game your family plays where people like me are just pawns. Matteo moved to the window, looking out at the moonlit gardens. You've constructed quite a narrative about us in the past 24 hours. Am I wrong? I challenged. He turned back to me, his expression grave. About some things, yes. My father is ruthless in business, unyielding with enemies. But family is sacred to him, to all of us. Domenico betrayed that code when he abandoned you, especially once he knew about Lucia. He didn't know, I said quietly. I found out I was pregnant after he disappeared. Matteo's eyebrows rose slightly. That changes things. My father assumed Domenico knew and chose to leave anyway. Would it have made a difference? Would your precious family code have allowed him to stay with a nobody like me? Bitterness crept into my voice. Yes, Matteo said simply. It would have. Family above all else, that's the Ricci way. If Domenico had come to my father and explained, arrangements would have been made. I laughed humorlessly. Arrangements? Like this one? Locked away in a gilded cage? You're not locked in, Sophia. His voice hardened slightly. You're free to leave, and free to explain to Lucia why you'd rather face killers on your own than accept our protection. The truth of his words stung. What choice did I really have? My daughter's safety came before my pride, before my independence, before everything. Matteo must have read the capitulation in my face. His expression softened. It won't always be like this. Once the threat is eliminated, how? I interrupted. How exactly does one eliminate a threat in your world, Matteo? Should I be preparing to explain to my 5-year-old why people disappear? We're not monsters, he said quietly, despite what you may believe. No? Then why did your little drawing at the restaurant feel like a test? Why did your father look at me like I was livestock to be assessed? Why take my daughter before even speaking to me? Matteo sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. The drawing was impulsive. I wanted to see you smile. It wasn't a test. As for my father, he spent a lifetime keeping his emotions hidden. It's how he survived. And Lucia, he hesitated. That was my decision, not his. I convinced him it was safer to move quickly. I'm sorry if it terrified you. The sincerity in his voice made my anger falter. It did terrify me. Nothing in my life has ever frightened me more. I can imagine, he said softly. When I was 7, my mother was kidnapped by one of my father's rivals. She was returned 3 days later, physically unharmed but changed. I've never forgotten that fear. The personal revelation surprised me. What happened to her? She left Italy 6 months later. Lives in Switzerland now under a different name. A shadow crossed his face. I see her twice a year, always in secret. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. The point is, I understand fear for family. It's why I acted as I did with Lucia. Preventative, not reactive. He moved toward the door. You should rest. Tomorrow my father wants to discuss more permanent arrangements. Permanent? Alarm flared in my chest. Nothing drastic, Matteo assured me. But Lucia is a Ricci, which means certain provisions need to be made. Education, security, inheritance. Inheritance? I echoed faintly. Matteo's lips curved in a small smile. Get some sleep, Sophia. Things will seem clearer in the morning. But sleep eluded me long after he'd gone, my mind churning with the impossible situation we'd found ourselves in. Sometime past midnight, I slipped into Lucia's room, curling protectively around her sleeping form, drawing comfort from her steady breathing. We'll be okay, I whispered to her, to myself. Somehow, we'll be okay. Morning brought sunshine streaming through unfamiliar windows, and Lucia bouncing on my bed, already dressed in clothes I'd never seen before. Signora Elena brought these for me, she explained, twirling to show off the pretty blue dress. She said my clothes are being washed. Can we see the horses today, Mama, please? Before I could answer, a knock came at the door. Elena stood there with a breakfast tray and a garment bag. Mr. Alessandro requests your presence in the study at 10, she said, laying out coffee and pastries. These clothes should fit. If not, let me know, and I'll find alternatives. Inside the garment bag was a simple but clearly expensive burgundy dress, along with new underwear, stockings, and black heels, all in my size. The intrusion of such intimate knowledge made me shiver. At precisely 10, dressed in the provided outfit, which fit perfectly, I was escorted to Alessandro Ricci's study by a silent security guard. The room was a testament to old-world power. Dark wood, leather-bound books, and a massive desk that created physical distance between the Mafia boss and whoever sat across from him. Alessandro himself stood by the window, speaking tersely into a phone. Matteo sat in a leather chair to one side, reviewing documents. Both men looked up when I entered. Sophia, Alessandro acknowledged, ending his call. Please sit. I took the chair facing the desk, back straight, chin up. If this was to be a negotiation about my daughter's future, I would not show weakness. Where's Lucia? I asked. With Elena in the stables, Matteo answered. She's quite taken with the ponies. Alessandro settled into his chair, steepling his fingers. We need to discuss Lucia's place in this family. She has a place in my family, I countered. Just me and her. That's been enough for 5 years, and yet here you are, Alessandro observed coolly, because that arrangement could no longer keep her safe. The barb found its mark. I swallowed my retort. Domenico was my brother's only son, Alessandro continued. His death leaves certain matters unresolved. Lucia, as his only child, inherits his share of our family holdings. She's 5, I said flatly. She doesn't need holdings. She needs safety, stability, a normal childhood, all of which require money and protection, Alessandro replied. Things I'm prepared to provide, with conditions. What conditions? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Alessandro leaned forward slightly. First, you will both remain under Ricci protection. That means living in a secure property, not necessarily here, but somewhere we can ensure your safety. Second, Lucia will attend the school we select with appropriate security measures. Third, she will be acknowledged publicly as Domenico's daughter and my grandniece. Each word felt like another bar in the gilded cage forming around us. And what about my life? My design studies? The career I've worked toward for years? You can complete your studies, Matteo interjected before his father could respond. We'll arrange whatever you need, materials, studio space, tutors if necessary. I glanced at him, surprised by the offer. Alessandro's expression revealed nothing about whether this had been previously discussed. And afterwards? I pressed. Am I expected to become a proper Mafia wife, sitting at home arranging flowers while armed men drive my daughter to ballet lessons? A flash of irritation crossed Alessandro's face. Your career is your concern, as long as it doesn't compromise Lucia's safety or the family's reputation. But understand this, Sophia. His voice hardened. Lucia is a Ricci. That fact doesn't change whether you accept our conditions or not. The only choice you have is whether she grows up protected by us or targeted because of us. The brutal truth of his words hung in the air between us. Matteo shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable with his father's bluntness. I want legal guarantees, I said finally. Not just promises. If I'm giving up our independence, I need assurances that Lucia's interest will always come first. Ahead of your business, ahead of family politics, ahead of everything. Alessandro's eyebrow arched slightly. You negotiate as if you have leverage. I have the one thing you apparently value, your brother's grandchild, I countered. And I'm the only person who truly puts her welfare above all else. A charged silence filled the room. Then, unexpectedly, Alessandro's mouth curved in what might almost have been a smile. Domenico chose better than he knew, he murmured, almost to himself. He opened a drawer and withdrew a folder, sliding it across the desk to me. These are the documents my lawyers have prepared. Review them, suggest changes if you must, but do not test my patience with frivolous demands. I took the folder without opening it. I'll need my own lawyer to review these. Already arranged, Matteo said. She'll be here this afternoon, Valeria Conti. She's independent, but understands our unique situation. I wondered what independent but understands truly meant in Ricci terms, but knew better than to ask. Instead, I focused on the most immediate concern. How long will we need to stay here, in this house, until we've neutralized the Barzini family's immediate threat? Alessandro replied matter-of-factly, a week, perhaps 2. The Barzinis, I repeated. The ones who killed Domenico? Alessandro nodded once. They control the port area and parts of the southern districts. They've been encroaching on our territories for years. Domenico's undercover work 5 years ago cost them millions and sent 3 of their lieutenants to prison. And now they want revenge through his daughter, I said, the reality of our situation sinking deeper. Precisely, Alessandro confirmed. But they've overreached. Targeting a child, especially a Ricci child, breaks certain understood boundaries. I didn't want to know what neutralizing the threat entailed. The less I knew about the violent aspects of Ricci business, the better. And after they're dealt with? What then? Then you and Lucia move to the property we're preparing in Brera, Matteo said. It's a secure building, close to the design district for your career, with good schools nearby for Lucia. All very convenient, I murmured. Though in truth, it sounded like a dream compared to our tiny apartment in the industrial outskirts. Alessandro stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Review the documents. We'll discuss your decision tomorrow, as if I had any real choice. Matteo escorted me from the study, his hand hovering near the small of my back without actually touching me, a gesture of guidance rather than control. Once we were in the hallway, away from his father's imposing presence, he relaxed visibly. I know how overwhelming this must be, he said quietly as we walked, but my father is right about one thing. The Barzinis won't stop unless we stop them. And after that, there will always be another threat, won't there? Another family, another vendetta. I clutched the folder against my chest like a shield. Matteo stopped walking, turning to face me fully. Yes, there will always be risks, but the difference is that now you have us, the entire Ricci organization, standing between those risks and Lucia. And what does your organization expect in return? Because no one gives protection without wanting something back. His amber eyes held mine steadily. Loyalty, that's all. Not involvement in business, not participation in family operations. Just loyalty, loyalty, I repeated skeptically. Meaning what, exactly? Meaning you don't betray family secrets. You don't speak to authorities. You accept the Ricci name and all it represents, good and bad. He hesitated. And you allow Lucia to know her heritage when she's old enough to understand. I thought of my bright, curious daughter, currently enchanted by ponies and princess beds. How would the truth change her? When would the innocent magic of childhood give way to the harsh reality of who her family truly was? Before I could respond, Elena appeared at the end of the hallway, her usually composed face tight with concern. Mr. Matteo, you're needed immediately. Security Protocol 7. Matteo's entire demeanor changed instantly, his body tensing, expression hardening. Where's Lucia? He asked sharply. With Bruno at the stables, Elena replied. Already secured. He turned to me, suddenly all business. Go with Elena to the safe room. Stay there until I come for you personally. No one else. What's happening? I asked, fear clutching at my throat. Just a precaution, he said, but his eyes told a different story. Go. Now. Elena hurried me through a series of hallways and down a back staircase I hadn't seen before. What's Protocol 7? I asked as we moved. Perimeter breach, she answered tersely. Someone is testing the property defenses. The safe room turned out to be a reinforced chamber beneath the house, accessed through the wine cellar. It contained communications equipment, supplies, and several cots. 2 armed men I hadn't seen before were already inside, checking weapons with practiced efficiency. Where's my daughter? I demanded as the heavy door sealed behind us. Bruno is bringing her through the tunnel entrance, one of the guards answered. Standard procedure. Family members use separate routes to the safe room. Family members. The words echoed strangely in my head. After just one day, we were already being treated as Riccis, protected like Riccis, hunted like Riccis. The minutes crawled by like hours as I paced the confined space, jumping at every crackle of the communication system. Finally, a hidden door on the far side of the room slid open, revealing a burly man carrying Lucia in his arms. She was laughing, apparently thinking this was all an elaborate game. Mama, we came through a secret tunnel like spies, she exclaimed as Bruno set her down. She ran to me, eyes bright with excitement. Bruno says we have to stay here for a little while because of a security drill. Isn't it cool? I hugged her tightly, meeting Bruno's eyes over her head. His slight headshake told me this was no drill, but I played along for Lucia's sake. Very cool, Tesoro. Did you have fun with the ponies before the drill started? For the next hour, I distracted Lucia with the emergency supplies, turning them into props for an improvised game. Meanwhile, terse communications filtered through the security system, positions being checked, sectors being cleared. The professional calm of the guards did little to ease my growing anxiety. When the heavy main door finally opened again, Matteo stood there, a thin cut across his cheekbone, the only sign that something had happened. "All clear," he announced, though his eyes remained alert. "False alarm." The guards nodded, immediately beginning shutdown procedures for the safe room. Bruno offered to take Lucia to the kitchen for a snack, which she happily accepted. Once she was out of earshot, I confronted Matteo. "False alarm? Then what happened to your face?" He touched the cut absently, caught it on a branch during the perimeter check. "Nothing serious." "Don't lie to me," I said fiercely. "Not about things that affect Lucia's safety." Something in my tone must have reached him. His shoulders dropped slightly, and he guided me to a quiet corner of the room. 2 men tried to breach the eastern wall. They were intercepted before they got far. It appears to have been a reconnaissance attempt, not a full assault. "The Barzinis?" Matteo nodded grimly. "Almost certainly. Testing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. Are they—" I couldn't bring myself to finish the question. "They've been detained for questioning," he replied, understanding my unasked question. "The less you know beyond that, the better." Cold fear washed through me. This wasn't a movie or a television drama. This was real danger. Men with guns coming for my child. "I want to see the security measures," I said suddenly. "All of them. If I'm going to trust you with Lucia's safety, I need to understand how you're protecting her." Surprise flickered across Matteo's face, followed by what might have been respect. "That can be arranged. Bruno is our head of security. He can give you a complete briefing." As we left the safe room, returning to the main house, I realized something had shifted within me. The abstract threat had become concrete. The choice Alessandro had laid out, Ricci protection or Ricci targeting, was no longer theoretical. By the time we reached the sunlit foyer, I had made my decision. 2 weeks later, I stood in the center of a sun-drenched apartment in Brera, watching as Lucia explored her new bedroom with its custom-built dollhouse and reading nook. The space was 3 times larger than our old apartment, with high ceilings, original moldings, and bulletproof windows, a detail Bruno had pointed out during our security walkthrough with professional pride. The past 14 days had transformed my understanding of the Ricci world. After the perimeter breach, I'd insisted on complete transparency about our security arrangements. To my surprise, both Alessandro and Matteo had agreed. Bruno had shown me everything: the surveillance systems, panic buttons, escape routes, safe rooms. The level of protection was simultaneously reassuring and terrifying. During those 2 weeks at the villa, I'd also negotiated changes to Alessandro's documents with Valeria Conti, who turned out to be genuinely independent and formidable. The final agreement acknowledged Lucia as Domenico's heir while establishing trust funds that neither Alessandro nor anyone else could access until her 25th birthday. It guaranteed our housing, security, education, and health care while preserving my parental authority and career independence. Most importantly, it specified that Lucia would learn about her heritage gradually, at an age-appropriate pace determined jointly by me and the Riccis. "Do you like it?" Matteo asked now, standing in the doorway of our new living room. He'd personally overseen the apartment's renovation, ensuring it met both security requirements and my personal preferences. "It's beautiful," I admitted, running my hand along the sleek kitchen counter. "Hard to believe it's really ours." "The entire building is Ricci-owned," he explained, not for the first time. "The other residents are either family members or trusted associates. The doorman and maintenance staff have been with us for years, a gilded cage, still, but one with much more space to breathe." "The studio space on the 5th floor is ready whenever you want to see it," Matteo continued. "Father made arrangements with your design school. You can complete your final project here if you prefer, or attend classes with a security detail. I'd already decided to finish my coursework remotely. The idea of sitting in lectures with armed guards nearby seemed absurd. "I'll visit the studio tomorrow. Tonight is about helping Lucia settle in." Matteo nodded, understanding. In these 2 weeks, I'd come to recognize his genuine concern for Lucia's well-being. Despite my initial suspicions, he seemed to want only what was best for her, though his definition of best was filtered through the lens of Ricci privilege and protection. "My father will visit tomorrow evening," he said. "He wants to bring a gift for Lucia's new room." Alessandro's relationship with Lucia had evolved in unexpected ways. The cold, calculating crime boss transformed subtly in her presence. He wasn't exactly grandfatherly. Alessandro Ricci would never be warm and cuddly. But he listened to her chatter with surprising patience and had even been spotted teaching her to play chess on the villa's terrace. "Should I cook dinner?" I asked, only half joking. The idea of preparing a meal for the head of Milan's most powerful criminal organization still seemed surreal. Matteo's mouth quirked in amusement. "He'll probably bring food. My father believes no important family discussion should happen without proper Italian cuisine." "What important discussion? I thought we'd finalized everything." A hint of anxiety crept into my voice. "Nothing concerning," Matteo assured me. "Just some updates on the situation." The situation was the Ricci euphemism for their ongoing conflict with the Barzinis. I deliberately avoided asking for details, but I knew things had escalated after the attempted breach at the villa. Twice I'd overheard tense phone calls, seen Matteo and Alessandro conferring in urgent whispers. Men had come and gone at odd hours, their faces grim, their conversations ceasing whenever I entered a room. "Is it almost over?" I asked quietly. Matteo's amber eyes held mine. "Yes. My father will explain tomorrow." Later that night, after Lucia had finally fallen asleep in her new princess bed, which had mysteriously been recreated exactly like the one at the villa, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, looking out over Milan's rooftops. From this height, the city seemed peaceful, its lights twinkling against the night sky. A soft knock drew my attention. Matteo stood at the balcony doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the apartment lights. "May I join you?" I nodded, gesturing to the empty chair beside me. Over the past weeks, we'd fallen into a strange, cautious friendship. His initial intensity had mellowed into something more contemplative, more genuine. We'd spent evenings talking about art. His knowledge surprised me, about Lucia's future, about everything except the violence that underpinned his family's power. "The security system is fully operational," he said, sitting down. "Bruno completed the final checks an hour ago." "Good." I took a sip of wine. "Lucia loves it here. She's already planning a tea party for her stuffed animals tomorrow." Matteo smiled, a real smile that softened his aristocratic features. "She adapts quickly. Children are resilient that way." "Sometimes too resilient," I mused. "I worry she'll accept all this. The guards, the security protocols, the Ricci name, as normal. Isn't that better than living in fear?" "Is it? Normal should be playground visits without security sweeps. Normal should be making friends without background checks on their families." I shook my head. "But I know we don't have that option anymore." We sat in companionable silence for a while, sharing the night air and the distant sounds of the city. Finally, Matteo spoke again, his voice quieter than before. "I never thanked you." "For what?" "For not hating us. For allowing Lucia to know her heritage. For giving me, a chance to be part of her life." He stared out at the cityscape. "You could have fought us harder, regardless of the consequences." "Fighting would only have hurt Lucia," I said simply. "And whatever else I think about your family, I believe you care about her." "I do." He hesitated, then added, "And I care about you, Sophia." The words hung in the space between us, honest and unadorned. Not a declaration of love or even attraction, but something more fundamental, recognition of worth, of value beyond Lucia's parentage. "I know," I said finally. "That's the only reason I'm sitting here instead of running as far away as possible." His mouth quirked in that half-smile I'd come to recognize. "Where would you go that we couldn't find you?" "Precisely." He laughed softly, and for a moment, the weight of our complicated situation lifted. In that moment, he wasn't the Ricci heir, and I wasn't the mother of his cousin's child. We were just two people sharing a quiet evening. The illusion shattered when his phone vibrated. He checked it, his expression immediately hardening into the mask of the man I'd first met at Bellissimo. "I have to take this." He stood, already moving toward the door. "Lock up after me. Don't open for anyone but me or Bruno tonight." The abrupt shift reminded me of who he truly was, what his family truly did. "Matteo," I called after him. "Is Lucia in danger tonight?" He paused. "No, this is the end of the situation. By morning, the Barzinis will no longer be a threat." I didn't ask how. Some questions were better left unanswered. True to Matteo's word, Alessandro arrived the following evening with an entourage bearing food containers from Milan's finest restaurant and a large wrapped package for Lucia. She tore into it eagerly, revealing an antique wooden chess set with pieces carved from ivory and obsidian. "It belonged to your father," Alessandro told her, his usually stern voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. "He was quite good at the game, perhaps better than your uncle Matteo." "Really?" Lucia looked at the set with new reverence. "Can you teach me to play like my daddy did?" A shadow crossed Alessandro's face. Regret, perhaps, for the nephew who'd never know his daughter. "I will. And you will surpass us all, I think." Later, after Lucia had been tucked in with promises of chess lessons the following day, Alessandro, Matteo, and I sat in the dining room. The remnants of our feast lay between us, along with a bottle of wine that probably cost more than a month's rent at my old apartment. "It's done," Alessandro said without preamble. "The Barzini threat has been eliminated." I set down my wine glass carefully. "What does that mean exactly?" Alessandro's cold eyes assessed me. "It means you can send Lucia to school without 4 guards. It means you can visit your design studios without looking over your shoulder. It means the immediate danger has passed." "How?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "You don't want to know the specifics," Matteo interjected. "No blood on this floor," Alessandro added, misinterpreting my concern. "The resolution was diplomatic. The new Barzini leadership understands that targeting children crosses a line no one can come back from." New leadership. I didn't need details to understand what that meant. "So, we're safe," I said, trying to focus on the outcome rather than the means. "As safe as anyone in our position can be," Alessandro corrected. "There will always be risks, but you have the full protection of the Ricci family now, in perpetuity. No one will dare touch what belongs to us." What belongs to us? The possessive phrasing should have bothered me more than it did, but after weeks of living with the Riccis, I'd come to understand their worldview. Family as possession, possession as protection, protection as love. It was alien to my own values, and yet I could no longer entirely condemn it. "Thank you," I said simply. Alessandro nodded once, the matter settled in his mind. "Matteo will remain your primary contact for security and family matters. I'll visit weekly to continue Lucia's chess lessons, if that's acceptable." It wasn't really a question, but I appreciated the pretense of choice. "Of course. She'd like that." After Alessandro left, Matteo lingered, helping me clear away the dinner dishes despite my protests that it wasn't necessary. There was an ease between us now that hadn't existed before, born of shared danger, shared responsibility for Lucia, and perhaps something more personal taking root. "Will you be staying in the building?" I asked as we finished. "The top floor," he confirmed. "Close enough if you need anything, far enough for privacy." Our eyes met over the kitchen island, and I saw in his the same recognition I felt, that whatever was growing between us would take time, patience, trust that neither of us could fully give yet. We were connected by circumstance and family ties, but anything beyond that would have to develop naturally, carefully. "One day at a time," I said softly. He nodded, understanding. One day at a time. Later, I stood in Lucia's doorway, watching her sleep peacefully surrounded by her new treasures, including the chess set from her grandfather. Her world had expanded in ways I'd never imagined, for better and worse. She would grow up knowing both protection and danger, privilege and constraint, love and power. As I turned to go to my own bed, I caught sight of Matteo in the hallway, speaking quietly with Bruno about tomorrow's security rotation. He glanced up, meeting my eyes, and something unspoken passed between us. An acknowledgement that we were now bound together in this strange new life. I closed my bedroom door and leaned against it, finally allowing myself to exhale fully for the first time in weeks. We were safe. We were provided for. We were part of something larger than ourselves. A family with darkness at its core, but also with an unbreakable commitment to its own. It wasn't the life I'd chosen, but it was the life we had now, and as I slipped between the sheets of my new bed, I realized that despite everything, I wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Not just Lucia and me, but all of us, bound by blood and choice and that silent signal that had started